Frankie, we're getting closer to Christmas this year, and I think 2020 has been a year unlike any other.
Correct.
But Christmas for so many people remains such an important time of year for all sorts of reasons. And I think in Enniskillen at the minute, I know we're really enjoying the lights. The Swan has attracted great attention outside the castle. The little house lit up on Castle Island and the small boat now at Cherry Island. When do you remember, there being lights on the streets or trees that the council took on, the responsibility of decorating the town?
Right. 1960, Catherine, was probably the first year that we ever had a Christmas tree on the diamond.
Okay.
And lights in the town. Chamber of Commerce were mainly involved in it, along with the council. There was always a special guest to switch on the council. Obviously the mayor of the town at that time was Dr. Bryson, and he switched on the lights the first year, but there was various different dignitaries that would have been used to do it from then on.
So it was a big thing.
The first 5 were unbelievable because the children of the town had never seen this before.
Do you remember that?
I remember, but I wasn't a child at that stage. But at the end of the day, I was probably 11 or 12 at that time. And the big gathering of children and adults, because obviously in my time at that time you weren't allowed up the town unless you had a parent with you. So big school gatherings, choirs from the school, choirs from the churches, St. McYarton's, the Methodist Church, St. Michael's, and the Presbyterian Church, and they all gathered along with the school choirs as well. The biggest one of those actually was in 1965, and over 500 people were involved in the musical choir that was there that day, between schools and everything. Absolutely fabulous, fabulous.
So this was clearly important in all sort of the churches, all of the schools, and they were keen to celebrate the tree in the town.
Most definitely, and I mean, just take the schools for instance. Schools choirs would have been practicing their Christmas, traditional Christmas hymns for weeks and weeks before that, so that everything was perfect. And the fact that they all came together on that day and that it was perfect, it was absolutely superb. The sound in Enniskillen town was unbelievable.
Well, it's funny that you said that, because I was thinking about sort of sounds and the town, in all sorts of contexts, but particularly at Christmas. The Scotch Door is obviously really important.
Very important.
And there would have been the bell of the Scotch Door.
Yeah.
There would have been the Angelus, obviously from the convent.
Yes.
There would have been at one stage the bells from the gaswork. Henderson and Eady, if the wind was right in Lisbon, you could hear it. The Workhouse bell. And I suppose these acoustics are such a part of our heritage as well.
Correct.
In terms of the Scotch Door then, coming up to Christmas, turkeys.
Thousands of them. And women from the town were employed on a temporary basis prior to Christmas from all directions of the town. One in particular stands out is Josie Feely. Josie Feely was a great character that I knew personally myself my whole life until she passed away. Josie Feely was brought in, and she was like a supervisor.
The chief turkey
She was the chief turkey plucker, and everybody done it the way she showed them to do it. If they didn't, they weren't kept.
Right.
But they done it properly. The women were experienced, they had gathered over the years.
Presumably this was only for maybe in the week, couple of weeks
before Christmas, a couple of weeks, because SCWS, Scottish Cooperative Wholesale Society, supplied Great Britain. It wasn't just Ireland, it wasn't just Fermanagh. All these turkeys were sent away. Remember that there was only 3 factories throughout Great Britain, and one of them was here in Enniskillen with us. So they supplied that, but the farmers came in, and on the last Thursday before Christmas was always the big market.
Right.
So they brought in whatever their wives had reared on the farm, mostly turkeys, but
not the
children, but mostly turkeys, but also duck and also geese.
So this was an important source of income.
Most definitely.
Presumably for farmers coming in to Enniskillen on the Thursday before Christmas. You've no freezers, so everything is bought fresh. Everything is cooked. On Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and I take it the celebrations were much the same as they are now, or would have been different?
Well, they would have been different, Catherine. There wouldn't have been as much money about as there was. But everybody tried to push the boat out that wee bit at Christmas time, and it was a special day. You got all the trimmings that we normally get. There may not have been all the the wee extra things. But
there was no nut roast.
Well, definitely not. And all, you know, I mean.
What would you have got for Christmas? What would have been your presents on Christmas morning? Did you have stocking?
I remember getting a stocking. We got stockings when we were very small, and we would have got an orange and an apple in it, and we would have got a water pistol. You
see, we say that to children here when we're doing our education programme, you know, and it's the joke of, you know, you'll get pole for Christmas, or, you know, you'll get an orange.
Yes.
And it seems incredible now that was such a treat.
Yes. Yeah, well, coal was a thing that somebody brought to the house. So that if you came to visit me, Catherine, you brought a piece of coal with you and you handed it. That was to say, heat for your house for the Christmas. Heat for your house for the rest of the year. So that was a tradition. Mostly among families. If you were going to visit somebody that wasn't your family, you might not have done that. But mostly among families have done that. The fruit that you got was a special treat, because as we go up now and buy half a dozen oranges and half a dozen apples, or even more, and we give them to the children and they eat them out of a bowl on the table. When I was growing up, we didn't get that. These were special treats. Packets of sweets. As I said, a water pistol. I remember getting a water pistol that only cost maybe about 2 shillings, maybe, not even 2 shillings, maybe a shilling, maybe sixpence.
I suppose then, when you think about it, as you say, money was tight, times were different, and a place close to my heart, obviously, as people will know in Enniskillen, is the Workhouse. And I know that there are accounts in the papers, and we have some in terms of our oral history here, of how on Christmas Day, even in the Workhouse, there were attempts by the Board of Guardians there to make life, I was going to say normal, but to make life a wee bit more comfortable for who they still refer to as the inmates.
Inmates. They call them inmates, is right, which wasn't a good term, but
it's of the time.
Yes, it is. Yes. But there would have always been a Board of Guardians meeting prior to the Christmas festivities, and they would have discussed various different menus that the inmates would have been having, and sometimes I tried to give them roast beef instead of boiled beef. Most of the beef was all boiled, which meant that it was easily eaten, and you didn't necessarily need a knife and fork. So you know, the ambulance driver, who was a permanent fixture in it, and the ferryman were allowed special treats at Christmas time as well, like tea, like sugar, like roast beef.
And again, it's amazing to think that tea, sugar, you know, those absolute necessities that every house will have, you know, is seen as a treat. The other thing that comes to mind is that, in one of the reminiscences that I have gathered over the years in terms of the Workhouse, is that those inmates who did have a knife and a fork and a spoon carried their own knife and fork and spoon in a belt around their waist.
So that they didn't lose them.
So that they didn't lose them.
Or nobody took them.
And presumably the roast beef then would have been, they would have needed to cut it. So it's easier to boil it.
But they also may not have had, depending on their circumstances, they may not have had a knife and fork.
The other thing, just really, I suppose, to ask you about before we close, is the man himself, Santa Claus. How big a thing was Santa Claus in Enniskillen? Did he arrive in town? I remember as a child going into Wellward on the Diamond, and Santa Claus was on the left hand side, beside where the ice cream was, in a chimney. And I loved going to see Santa Claus there. I remember Santa Claus as a child bringing me a buggy from a doll's house, a record player. I remember then being gifted small singles that I put on the record player, and I know younger people are looking at this going, a record player, you know, as opposed to, you know, Spotify. It's a whole different sort of ball game now. But how big was Santa, and would he have arrived in town?
Well, Santa arrived in town really from Wellware's opened. So we remember Wellware's on the Diamond. But the first place that Wellware's were was in a little hallway in High Street.
Just about where Nationwide was?
Exactly where Nationwide, not just about, exactly. Right? And it was a hallway. It was just like a narrow hall. Shelves on one side, shelves on the other. And Mr. Moore started it. But he also started Santa Claus coming to town.
Santa Claus.
Santa Claus is what I'm going to call him, right? He's a great man. He was a great man for the children. Hundreds of children would have gathered in the town to see Santa arriving. And sweets were never thrown out. Even if you only got one sweet, it was special. But if you got 2 or 3, you shared them with your friends, you didn't get any. But Santa came to us when we were small, and he brought our Christmas presents in our house in Strand Street, in the old streets in the town. And we remember it well because he actually pulled a wee piece of his beard off and gave it to us to put underneath our pillow. And we had it for a good while underneath the pillow.
And was that meant to bring you luck? Or?
For luck. But it also brought treats. Treats like games, snakes and ladders, Ludo, all of those games that would be now ancient marbles, all of those small things, and it was about how many you got. But everybody in the house got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever the oldest one got, the youngest one got as well.
Okay.
So it was about equal sharing and sharing out the goods that we got. Fruit, sweets, biscuits. Biscuits were a special treat as well. So today we get big boxes of chocolate biscuits. If you got 2 or 3
custard creams,
whatever it was in the stock, and it was great. It was a fabulous time.
And I suppose what it does, and this year in particular, I suppose it makes us think about those things which are really important, and that is family and being with those you're close to, which will be this year more difficult.
Most definitely.
For a lot of people. But we have, I suppose, the capacity to Zoom.
Yes, we can speak to them. It can be, it can be short or long. It can be in any country in the world.
And then, of course, there are relatives you might want to see at Christmas. So in a way,
Or some of those as well. But, lots of traditions. I mean, 1965, I remember, and we didn't have many of them in those days because the weather seemed to change in those days. We had a white Christmas. It snowed on Christmas Eve. Christmas morning, going to church, and Christmas morning, the ground was white.
The last thing I'm going to ask you, as I said, you missed us talking about the big snow of 1947.
Yes.
And I know you don't remember the big snow of 1947.
No, wasn't born.
But subsequently, the winter of 1962 to 1963 again was a very harsh winter.
Very memorable.
And we spoke, or I spoke the other day about people skating on the Mill Lock or Racecourse Lock and on the back lock. Now, when I was talking to you, then were you able to tell me of something you remember from 1962?
I remember we went to St. Joseph's in 1960. But 1962, in the Christmas period, leading up to the Christmas period, it was a very, very, very heavy frost. There was reported measurements of ice on the Mill Lock or Racecourse Lock and Loch Earn of 12 to 14 inches deep with ice. I remember, and he just passed away this year, a fella called Tony McAnulty, driving his mini car on the Mill Lake or the Racecourse Lake out in the middle of it. And round and round.
How do you drive a car on ice?
Well, he skated around it mostly. But he got out there, right out to the middle of it, and done wheelies and whatever you want to call them out in the middle of it, and then drove it back in. What a chance to take. At the Johnson Bridge, and from the Johnson Bridge to the shovels, as I call them,
at the back of the
police station, the back streets played corner grade in a football match on the ice.
Who won?
The bridge or the back streets. The bridge was 1 goal and the 2 shovels was the other goals at the bottom. There must have been about at least 30 children playing football. You could walk across from the shore at Strand Street. You could walk across from there right to Riverside.
That's amazing.
And we did. Unbelievable.
You didn't need the Johnson Bridge.
No, but it was also dangerous. And it was also frowned upon by adults because many adults were shouting at us to come off them.